Hello. We go to Bern, the capital of Switzerland, but we stay in the same field. We talk about a library. It's the National Library of Switzerland. And we stay in a more or less identical time period of the late 20s and early 30s. This is not Bern, this is not a library, this is not our project. But I would like to talk about this piece of architecture. We heard a lot about linoleum, about colors, about these details of dealing with historical substance. I would move to a more strategic, technical, and typological level of discussion, which we are confronted with when dealing with heritage, not only with heritage, also with maybe not listed buildings that we will reuse for economical and also ecological reasons, which start to be more and more, of course, our daily business as architects. This mausoleum transformed into a fortress in the medieval times, transformed into a palace in the Renaissance. Maybe thanks to these transformations, the mausoleum in its substance survived in a quite a remarkable way. So, but also as an architect, we find this quite astonishing, how a building can transform or fundamentally change its use and develop its architectonical, spatial, typological form through time by the changes of the circumstances. This is not the kind of a manifesto for changing historical monuments. It's the opposite. But the fact is, this is a reality. This is the MEP plan of the National Library in Bern. The fact is that we are confronted with extremely high requirements in terms of safety, security, fire protection, earthquake stability, handicapped accessibility, climate issues, which confronts the given building structure. And I would like to talk and tell you about the experiences and the questions we are facing and we are working on. We finished the preliminary design. We are now currently developing the design and the technical drawings, and before we can go into the process of getting the credit by the financing by the Swiss Parliament next year. This is the visualization of our project. This is the historic building in a historic photograph. So you see the ones amongst you who were already afraid that we would go for a maximum change. It's not our goal. It's the opposite. No, how can we find strategies of dealing with listed buildings and with given structures? It completely changed our profession, I would say. Going back to the image of the MEP, when you build from scratch, you plan from scratch, you have dimensions given by your engineers and you can adapt your building. In this way, it's completely different. You start with a given structure, which comes together with requirements, and in most of the cases, this develops a kind of a conflict and problems. So I would like to start this presentation with a short portrait of the building, which was finished in 1931 by a group of architects. They teamed up. It was not an office, but they teamed up. Oeschger, Kaufmann, Hofstädtler. Oeschger is a bit known in Switzerland. There's a whole family of Oeschgers, but the other ones are kind of almost unknown architects. But what they did, I think, is quite a remarkable building. And I start with this for you, as you don't probably know this building, to present it, but I think it's also the starting point for every project. First, you have to fall in love. Also critically fall in love. Loving means also being critically and tolerant, but first you must develop a certain empathy to the building you're working on. Just a kind of a short overview. You see the construction site at the bottom. There is already a classicist gymnasium, high school building, which was built there. On top of this construction site, you see the Historical Museum of Bern, this historicist building. On the very left, this kind of belly building. This is the Swiss Parliament, which was built, I don't know, 1980s, 90s, probably right to it. This neo-modern, neo-Renaissance building was the original Parliament building. Switzerland was founded in 1848. Before it was a kind of a loose union of autonomous states, and only in 1848, it became a kind of a modern national state, which needed all these institutions. The parliament was built, the high school in Zurich, the ETH was built, High Court was built in Lausanne. So each city got a kind of institution, and the buildings didn't exist as we don't have a monarchy with leftover representative buildings. So they had to be built, mainly 19th century, but the library only in the 1920s. There it is built. You can see this very modern, at the same time symmetrical setting, with these two wings containing offices. In the middle, a low office wing, and behind in the center you see the skylights for the reading room, and in the back, monumental, the structure of the tower, the book tower, the book storage. It's very interesting. This also in relation now to Asplund, and originally you wanted to do a research on these two buildings. How in this typology, the book tower, even if set back from the entrance, it is the monumental setting which kind of dominates the expression of the building. So whereas Asplund gives the expression to the reading hall, where the reading hall is urbanistically relevant with the tower in the city. Here it's the book tower. So it is a maybe a more modest Swiss way of dealing with architecture, that the storage of the books, this very functional element, is the one which is showcased on an urbanistic level. This was the competition in 1927. There's a mistake in the it's the architect I mentioned before. But you can already see in a different way, the book tower in the middle, then this very low central body. So it's a kind of reversing the classicist composition of centering the mass with the entrance. The entrance is low with a two-story building, which then shows the tower, the book tower in the second layer, and these adjacent offices, as I said, a bit differently built. So this is a series of images. I would say this is typically Swiss. It is a bit stiff, no? It is a bit dry. It is reflecting the modern, orthodox modern vocabulary with these horizontal windows. Still, they are the facade is still load-bearing with these columns. There is still a socle. You can see a little bit in the topography, the socle clad in a granite stone. So there are still, I would say, lots of non-modernist issues. The Asplund was called as a kind of transitional project. I don't like this term so much. I think I would not understand a project just as something in between two perfect forms. maybe even this kind of aberrations from orthodox modernism makes it much more kind of as convincing as a real architecture. There is two side courtyards also with sculpture. So there was an artistic program, and this is the book tower from the rear, which is somehow strange because it's facing the city. So as you have seen, the entrance is facing away from the city. But this is book tower 8 stories, and the delivery is sunk. So they created an artificial topography to reach the first underground story for the delivery of this book tower. It's a complete monolithic in situ concrete construction, which we will talk about. And this is the typology in the floor plan. You can see what I was presenting in the images, these three different room categories. In the center, on the left, Lesesaal, the lecture hall. Mirrored on the right-hand side is the catalogs and a small exhibition space, Ausstellungssaal exhibition space, and then the maps and images. In the rear, the storage, and left and right, these two wings for offices. At that time already, it was a mix of different institutions. It still is. Today, the federal, the Ministry of Culture is situated here. So the left wing of these offices is occupied by the Bundesamt für Kultur, Ministry of Culture, next to the library itself, the administration of the library. This is the upper floor. You can see with the skylights in the center, and the same intersection, which makes it very clear, this composition of independent building structures. The book tower with this height of 2.27 m only, floor to floor height, the skylight structure in the middle, the lecture halls, and in the back, these office wings. So if you go through now these interiors, through the historical images, this is the book storage, 227 floor to floor. So the free height was 209, which was of course reflecting the ideal height of the bookshelves with a raster with a rhythm of 152 for the load-bearing structure in concrete. On top of this book tower, one exceptional office floor without any load-bearing structure, so with these huge beams spanning the whole width of this book tower. This is the first element. This is the book tower. Second element is this central reading halls. This is a historic image looking to the center of the building where you would check out. You have the information desk and the checkout with these historical images. And they turned the furniture for a certain point in a certain time, and with the view to the garden. This is now looking in the other direction with this light ceiling, and this is a more contemporary image from a publication from the 1990s showing the linoleum floor, the historic furniture, Swiss modernist furnishing design, these chairs. And then we go to the center where you have the information desk and the checkout area for the lending of the books. And on the opposite side, the catalogs and the small exhibition space. So this is also telling about the program. The Swiss National Library collects documents which have to do with Switzerland. It is a very open commission. So it's Swiss authors. There is the Schweizerische Literaturarchiv, the archive about Swiss literature. It's also, they collect all magazines and daily newspapers. So whatever is related to Swiss persons or Swiss history or Switzerland as a country is or published in Switzerland is collected here. So if we as architects, we publish a book on our work, it will find its way to this library. And the third category is these wings with the staircases also here. Of course, a modernist handrail in combination with a beautiful black limestone. And this is an image of the historic office. Specific feature is this verandas facing the gardens with an artwork, this mural, and as you had already seen before, these sculptures in these gardens. The building was already renovated in the 1990s and extended. The main thing was that two storages, I mean, this is the fundamental problem of museums and libraries. They collect and collect and collect, they have to grow. So they built in the 90s and then another one in the 2000s, these book storages underground. It's kind of an underground high-rise where they could free part of this book tower, and they implemented a reading room in the book tower. So this is a building of the construction site. You can see the dimensions. Using these two courtyards we have seen before for these storages. They did also intervene quite heavily in the book tower itself. There was a central staircase in the book tower which they took out. So this is the destruction. This is the image after the removal of the staircase. And they implemented two new staircases for which they cut through this structure of the book tower. It's a very beautiful image. As you can see, the structure now in this pure state. They built this staircase, which we found a bit problematic. The problem is that this is a bit untypical for Switzerland, no? That they really did some structural mistakes. So the building is unstable and had to be stabilized with these measurements and is partially closed today for security reasons. So you can see this provisoric bracings here, supports in parts of the building. So with this problem that part of this building is closed and new requirements, the competition was announced, and this is the Swiss federal state, which is the client, represented by a special institution, Bundesamt für Bauten und Logistik. They do all the federal construction work, and we are now commissioned as a joint venture with a building management company, a German-Swiss building company, Dresden Sommer, and all the engineers are working for us. So this is a typical Swiss organization form that as an architect you have to provide all the functions. So we are also responsible for the engineers, which has its good sides because we have an impact on them, but we also are responsible for them. So of course we only do it if we can choose really high-end firms which we can trust. So we don't have probably a general contractor. It will be probably done in a normal way of individual contracts with different firms, which will do the construction work. So the main task was stabilizing the structure, a bit more idealistic, connecting the building to the neighborhood, open and flexible spaces for events. You have seen already historically there was an exhibition space, but this is maybe the main driving force to open the institution, to renew the institution through construction works, to make it more, to develop it in a direction, I would say, of a centre culturel, to get rid of a pure storage of books and reading books in the reading hall into an institution which would discuss, which would have events, discussions as we have it here, and of course, at the same time, update the technical standards. So this is the historic building. This is our project. You can see, for instance, left and right from the entrance, these slim ramps, the access for wheelchair drivers, which is a condition, an absolute crucial condition for such a building. So even if it's a listed building, a national listed building, of course you have to fulfill all these requirements, which is right so. But as I said, this is somehow our profession as an architect to find a solution for that. So we try to resolve this within the logic of the building. So it's a strictly symmetrical building. We need only one ramp. We said if we have to do a ramp, then we do it two. Then we do two of it. It's not just a kind of resolving a problem, but we try to establish a language, even in the additions, that respects the logic of the building. And these are now images from the competition. So when we ended in the competition, we always confronted a historical image with our proposal. This is again these two ramps, the entrance. This is this side courtyard. This is the central hall where we would bring back the colors. So topics that we discussed today, the color and the linoleum, they come back also here. Transformation of the reading room into an exhibition area, which was required. Reconstructing the offices as they are, bringing back the color code. They had color in the exterior wall, color in the ceilings, which were then later painted white. I think it happened wherever in these historical buildings that in the modernist 60s, 70s, these colors were understood as a kind of an old-fashioned atmospheric element. We would also bring back the historic lamps, even if originally there was only one, but for to kind of fulfill the requirements, we had to put two behind. But still, I think we can stay with the original expression and vocabulary. And then the big challenge is this book tower. What do you do with a book tower? So our proposal was, you can see this biggest space is the reading room that they created in the 1990s, to have a kind of double height spaces, which would, even if you are very compressed, always allow a certain diagonal view and open it up these spaces to make these very compressed spaces acceptable. So we call this the paradox of the competition. It's how do you do a competition as an architect if you want to prove that all your engagement, all your energy, all your knowledge should just be used to protect the building as much as possible in the form that it has. No? At the same time, in a competition as an architect, you are forced to develop your strong identity as a designing architect, give an identity to a project. This was, of course, when you develop a building from scratch, you have solution A, B, C, D, and they differ very strongly. How do you do if you just, and I would say most good architects in Switzerland would go for a similar way, if it's all about protecting the building. So we said, and that's why we did this short movie for the presentation. You say, we have to engage or invest a lot of energy just in the drawings. In this film, we built a huge model to show that the project, the building as it is, to preserve this building as it is, this is our project. We don't add anything. Others, they added a huge hall underground, or they added a roof garden. And we didn't, we tried to kind of not fall into the trap of adding an element which would be an expression of our own language, but just resolving the problems. This was an old status with a handicapped RAM. So this is maybe just between the brackets a question how, as an architect, you would deal with in the age of adaptive reuse with the problem. You've seen now very slight design questions like this ramp. I would do a small digression also because this project is not developed so far that I can show you impressive images. This is somehow a design theory that we developed in our office, how to deal with given structures, be they listed or not. And we say, first, whenever we just repair. Repair means, for instance, here, this is the Swiss National Museum in Zurich. The roof, the floor was replaced in the 1980s by an ugly granite floor. So what do? Of course, we repair it, we bring it back. Same function, it's still an exhibition space. We have the information because some samples of this floor were in the archive of the museum, and you can do it today. You can technically do it. You can apply the same technology. So there's no reason not to do it. You have the information, you have the technology, and the function stays the same. We did it also here. That's okay. This was very small. No, it's just a floor. Here it is a bit more invasive. You can see this small chapel, and right to the chapel you have a space which goes over 3 floors, a vestibule for this chapel, and above a gallery, and above a space which brings in the natural light. This was the historic situation, and then in the 1960s they covered it. Natural light was not an issue anymore. You have the fluorescent bulbs, lights, so they closed it. So what we did is we reopened it. You can still see the 1960s ceiling a bit, and then we opened it, and behind we found this skylight, and this is the reconstructed situation. So again, here there is no reason why you couldn't reconstruct it in the way it was. The floor, we had the tiles, we had drawings of this railing. You have the technology, and in Switzerland you also have the money to do it. So as time is progressing, I go a bit faster. I skip some examples, and I go to the second category. So whenever we can, we just repair it. Sometimes you cannot repair it because there is no original state to which you can go back. For instance, here in the entrance hall, we needed a new staircase which goes down to the garderobe and the toilet. So how would you design the railing? Would you do it modern? Would you do a glass railing? Is it interesting, no, to have a Chris Gantenbein railing then? We said, no, it's not interesting. So what we did, we took a 3D, a silicone cast from existing railings in the house, and we reproduced the railing in concrete. So it is an element by the same architect who developed this architecture, brought from a different location in the house to here, or the same here. We did have to do reinforcement of the structure for stability reasons, also because the museum has higher loads on the floor above. So instead of reinforcing this historic beam, which is a steel beam hidden, we put another column. So the first one on the right is a limestone, the original, and the second one is also a cast concrete column, which is supporting this beam to resolve the problem. So I would say this is fictional. It's not original, but it is resolved in the way how the architect, we say, how would he have resolved if they had the question at the original time? So this is the fiction, and then maybe there's a third category, which is now also relevant, because then I will go back to our project for the Bern Library, find a new typology. You know, how do you deal with the challenges if a building is really facing new requirements? So this example comes from Basel, where we extended this also 1930s building of the art museum, which would also be interesting to connect to compare to Asplund, as it has this historical ventilation system in the walls. But this is a different topic. So we extended this building under the street. There is a connection. You can see here the connection. So even if we just build a new extension, it affects the existing house. You can see here, there's the connection underground, and this is the ground floor. So you can see that one wing of this existing building now contains the staircase, which goes down quite important height difference, I would say around 6 meters. And this was a wing that contained small exhibition cabinets, so it was exhibition spaces. And we had to sacrifice them. It changes the typology of this building. You see the main entrance and the main staircase that goes up to the galleries. So this side entrance, which had a small door going to these galleries, we opened it up, so it changes. Now the fact that there is a new building changes the organization of this one. So the new opening, this big window, a big door, is a new opening, which respects the fact that that there's a staircase behind. You can see the railing going down. So even if we reuse the elements which are already existing in this building, the same materials, the stone, the language of the opening, it still is a kind of a fundamental change, as a space which was an exhibition space becomes a part of the corridor and connection system. And this is the staircase going down. It's a bit an ugly image, but it's quite a nice space, also with the natural light. And of course, it relates to the existing architecture of this building. So going back to our project, I go fast. We have to do the whole MEP. Huh? I don't go into detail, but you see the architectonical reality, and I have already shown you this image. I mean, it's crazy what has to be done in this house, and you cannot escape, no? The MEP is also necessary to keep the climate stable. And of course, not only the house itself is a listed building and is heritage, but since it consists valuable books and documents, which are also heritage, you have to fulfill this climate quality. And I'm very critical about it. I don't think that these books would rot if it would be a bit more tolerant with the climate. But this is just the reality which you are confronted with. Of course, you need fire protection, you need ventilation, smoke extraction, you know it. And as I said, you know, the building is given, and just the pure dimension of these elements is crazy, and how to organize it is our challenge. We partially resolved it by adding an extension, an underground extension in front of the building. So what you can see here, I will come back to that, is a two-story underground building, which also offers atelier spaces, workshop spaces for the library that they need. But we also use this building as a kind of a connection tunnel for all these pipes, that we can reduce the impact of these types in the existing building. You can see it here. So the MEP is a huge issue. The second issue is what is a contemporary library? As I told, even in the original 1930s building, there was already an exhibition space. But this was the fundamental idea of the competition brief to create a kind of forum, as they called it, with a huge permanent exhibition area, with a huge multi-purpose room on the right-hand side related to a kind of gastronomy. Gastronomy also becomes more important for events, but also for the people working here. Having spaces for whatever innovative activities means. Flexible spaces where you can do workshops with classes, for instance, having meeting rooms and so on. So the whole ground floor is more or less occupied by this idea of a forum. And of course, as an architect, somehow at the first, in the first moment, you suffer from giving up this reading room, which was preserved to today, including its furniture. So at the end, we could agree on that under the condition that we don't change anything physically, that we say, okay, we take out the furniture, but we keep the furniture. Furniture, we put them out, in a different place. I will show you. You can do an exhibition, but maybe 10 years later, you can come back. I mean, this is an important question, dealing with this architecture. As I said, it is a bit stiff, the expression. And we as architects, we can deal with that. We understand it. We relate it to the 1930s, to the modern, to this modernism. But this institution, these people in these institutions that have to engage and have to prove that they go with the time and they are contemporary and they have to attract people, want to make it a vital place. They suffer from it. They suffer from this architecture, and we learned that it is important to convince these users that they can be creative and open and radically contemporary within a historic building. We don't have to destroy the historic building, but here we have to offer them a platform where they can do what they imagine could be a contemporary form of the institution of the National Library. So we do this rochade. The reading room goes up to the book storage. I will talk about this then if I find some minutes for that. And the rest remains more or less the same. Of course, the offices that are needed, and then another reading room for the special collections. This is climate-wise very critical, as there you have this rara, the rare and very old books and manuscripts, and then another office space in the top. And of course, the most complicated thing is the underground. I skipped the fire safety. I would also skip the structure and earthquake stability, but also there you cannot escape. You see, we have to cut the building or we have to glue together some parts. You cannot escape the regulations as when it comes to safety for humans. There is no kind of tolerance, at least in Switzerland. So also this, I don't explain you the details, but you can see that they are quite invasive in terms of what they mean for the load-bearing structure. This maybe I quickly show you. I was mentioning this this extension, the underground extension outside, which we also use as a kind of a connection tunnel for the whole MEP installation. This is a workshop building underground with natural light, which uses the feature of a kind of a ditch, of a small dug out zone along the facade, which was already existing, as the existing building has this half-sunk basement for workshop rooms already, and we further dig it out and have a lower floor with this technical installation and with this underground workshop spaces. This is a bit provocative. To renovate means to destroy. It is a variation of the quote by Luigi Snozzi, the famous Swiss Ticinese architect, who said, to build means to destroy. You always destroy something, at least the landscape. To build means to destroy, so destroy with cautious or destroy carefully. Huh? Let's face it, renovating such a building means to destroy. So we understand our job to do it as carefully as possible, but we have to accept it, that it is quite invasive. And I don't go into the detail of the plans, partially you've already seen, but just the amount of red, which partially is structural reinforcement, partially it's upgrading of facade for energetic reasons, partially it's adaptations to functional conditions. Partially, it's the renovation of windows. The facade has one facade has windows from the 1980s, so we replace them, and where we still have the original ones from the 1930s, we renovate them and replace just the glasses. But you can see all over there is lifts for handicapped access, earthquake stability, walls, new toilets, fulfilling the requirements. I would just finish with the book tower, with the question of the book tower, and also coming back to the 3 strategies of repairing of a fictional renovation and of finding a new typology. And here we have quite a challenging condition. I was mentioning it. This was the historic structure of a book tower, which had natural ventilation via the windows, heating along the facade, and some electrical installations more or less for the light. During the time the ventilation was installed, you can see it in this image, the ventilation at the ceiling. Electricity was brought in a more invasive way, the heating stayed, and cooling for the top floor for the offices. So what does this mean? It means that when we have to reinforce the floors, for not even also for structural reasons, but maybe mostly for the fire protection, as the fire resistance of the floor is not sufficient. There is very slim 10 centimeter concrete floor. So if we have to reinforce the floor, if we bring in sprinkler, if we have more technical installations on the ceiling, then the height of the room is 2 meter or 9. And we built this model 1-to-1 in our office. This is a cardboard and styrofoam model in our office. And we brought in the client, and we agreed on that we have to be more radical in dealing with this structure. And what came out is this typological solution of alternating floors, that we would have one floor, the blue one, that we use, and then the second one, which is a kind of a technical installation, where we would have technical installations at both ends, central for the air units, and use this corridor for all the tubes. So clearing one floor and sacrificing the other one. you can again see now, I think this, I love somehow these BIM models. It shows very well that every second floor has these installations. And in between, 3 times, you have these big halls on both sides. We need a central core in the middle for earthquake stability to stabilize the building, which at the same time we use also for a vertical connection. So what comes out is these 3 big halls, which we use as a lecture hall, as we give up the lecture hall for this exhibition space. So we have 3 lecture halls on these different levels. The Heritage Authority, they were very positive about that, because they said, I mean, it's a fact like the Castel Sant'Angelo, no? When a building changes from a storage building for books to a building for human beings, it is obvious that something has to change. And our first way of just cutting out small pieces to open up some visual connection lines didn't really work. So during the development of the project, we came to this radical variant. It is invasive. We destroy these historical slabs and also historical pillars. At the same time, we make this structure, which is still there, also visible for the visitors. We are also happy that somehow there is a inner logic between the existing reading room with these adjacent niches for the books, would somehow find its equivalent in this section of these new reading rooms in the tower. So here I would say it is a development of a new typology, not because we want to change, but because we understand our profession as an architect to find a spatial, a formal solution for the new requirements and conditions of a building. So maybe this is all obvious. So maybe this is very interesting. Just for those amongst you who are interested in the technical solutions. So here you can see one of these double floor halls where this is the top floor with the office on top, which was already existing, which we just renovate, isolation of the roof. But then you can see the reinforcement of the floors, which is necessary. And then this kind of double high hall with adjacent corridors that we sacrifice, where we install all the tubes for ventilation, heating, sprinkler, electricity. So we sacrifice these 2 in order to save the rest, where we are more or less free of installations. This is just a historical build image. That's somehow how it started when we were starting the competition. The brief was clear. It's a listed building. You cannot do anything. But we said, no, we love this tower so much. This book tower, it's an impressive structure, of course. Also due to this strange fact that you read it as an 8-story building, but these stories are so compressed that the building looks much bigger than it is. So this book tower, which originally in the 1930s scheme was the dominant urbanistic feature, will now become a space for studying. Will be the most prominent or most obvious change in this renovation, where we try to keep the building as much as it is, but here these new requirements, this new understanding of a forum that occupies the ground floor, which brings the reading halls into the tower. This is a consequence of a new understanding of the institution of the library. And this is the model we built to control the proportions, also to control materiality, to control even detailing. We built these models in the office, and we hope that this adding a layer to this historic building would also add a certain layer of complexity and be in favor of the building and transport it into a new era. Thank you.